Ted Bundy, a serial killer with countless victims.
Bundy was charming, intelligent. No one thought he was capable of the things he did.
Bundy was vicious and brutal, with over 30 deaths to his name.
The horrors we witnessed at Chi Omega will haunt us forever.
Ted Bundy, the nightmare relived. Ted Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont in 1946. He was raised by his grandparents because his husbandless mother was ashamed of having an illegitimate child.
He grew up thinking that his grandparents were his birth parents. When he found out the truth, he really resented his mother for lying to him for all those years.
After discovering the truth, Bundy and his mother moved to Washington for a new start, but things did not get much better.
Bundy definitely had a troubled adolescence, to say the least. He spent a lot of his time drinking and staring into the houses of young women in the neighborhood.
Ted was always normal on the surface. There was just something about him that was a little off. I just never thought things would escalate the way they did.
In 1966, Bundy enrolled at the University of Washington, where he began his study of Mandarin. There, he met his first girlfriend, Stephanie Brooks.
Stephanie was smart and pretty. She came from a wealthy family. She was the whole package.
Ted was crazy about her. When she broke up with him, he did everything in his power to get her back.
When Steph broke up with Ted, there were definitely noticeable changes in his behavior. He started taking his education a lot more seriously, I think in hopes of impressing her.
His plan worked. After meticulously working towards his goal, Bundy finally got Brooks back. They even became engaged. But one day, out of nowhere, Bundy cut off all contact with Brooks, never speaking to her again.
Most experts believe that Bundy's actions towards Stephanie were a form of sick revenge. He wanted her to feel as embarrassed as he felt, and he took extreme measures to get there.
It wasn't long after the breakup with Brooks that women began disappearing around the Pacific Northwest.
There is a general consensus among most experts that Bundy began his killing spree in '74. The first victim is believed to be Karen Sparks. She was a student at UW, which is the university where Bundy also attended.
Karen's death was devastating. That man just broke into a house and started beating her with some metal rod or something. She didn't deserve this.
But Karen was only the first of many to die at the hands of the brutal Ted Bundy. Wherever Bundy went, girls began mysteriously disappearing.
So Bundy typically lured his female victims to his car. You know, he was a casual guy, kind of unsuspecting and pretty chill.
Bundy raped his victims and then beat them to death, often with a large metal rod or crowbar. But perhaps the most disturbing part about Bundy's process was that he kept the heads of his victims as trophies.
Oh, hey, excuse me, could you help me put this chair in my truck, please? Thank you so much. Seriously, I got something up with.
Many of Bundy's victims looked very similar in appearance. They were all white women with long dark hair. Many have speculated that he was drawn to this type of appearance due to his relationship with Stephanie Brooks.
Bundy was finally arrested for the kidnapping of Carol DeRanch, one of the few women who managed to escape Bundy. Although he was convicted and put behind bars, he didn't stay there for long. In February of 1976, Ted Bundy was put on trial for the kidnapping of Carol DeRanch. While he believed he would be found innocent, he couldn't have been more wrong.
At the trial, Bundy was very calm and very collected. He was convinced that there is no solid evidence against him.
When Carol DeRanch took the stand and testified against him, Bundy had this cold, dark look in his eyes. That's when we all really saw the monster within him.
In December of 1997, after almost 20 years in jail, Ted Bundy managed to escape prison through a hole he created in the ceiling of his cell. He lost 30 pounds in order to fit through the passageway, and then quickly fled to Tallahassee, Florida, where he would do the unthinkable. Nearly 20 years after his first arrest, Ted Bundy escaped from prison for a series of deadly crimes that would terrify the nation. On January 15th, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house At Florida University, the unsuspecting young women were in for a night of unimaginable horror.
We didn't know why we were targeted. We didn't even know who this person was. The horrors I witnessed that night will haunt me forever.
Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy lost their lives on that fatal evening. The rest of the women at Chi Omega spent much of their lives living in fear.
Maggie was my best friend. She was so young when it happened. We were all so young.
Following the Chi Omega terror, Bundy went on to commit one last fatal crime: the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach.
It was found that Bundy led the girl into a white van after school one day. The court was able to convict him based on fibers of Leach's clothes found in his vehicle.
Bundy chose to represent himself at the trial. His attorneys planned on pleading not guilty by reason of insanity.
It was no surprise that the jury reached a guilty verdict. Bundy's reign of terror was over, and he was sentenced to death.
While Bundy was famous for saying, "What's one last person on the face of the earth anyway?" he seemed to feel differently in regard to his own life. Bundy fought the death penalty and appealed it many times, unsuccessfully, of course. He died.
In January of 1989, Ted Bundy was put to death in the electric chair. His ashes were strewn over the same Washington State mountain area where he had dumped the bodies of his victims. Despite the horrible crimes Ted Bundy committed, some view him as a type of hero.
There are people out there, especially women, who view Ted Bundy different than us. Some of them send fan letters, some of them even send love letters.
Ted Bundy was not a hero. He was a sick person who took so many lives.
We serial killers are your sons. We are your husbands. We are everywhere. And there will be more of your children dead tomorrow.